Welcome to another edition of the Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project. I am joined today by Miranda Shown. She is a rotational technician at Tech-Endress and Hauser. Miranda, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, just tell us a little bit about rotational technician and what it is exactly you do at Tech-Endress and Hauser.
Okay, so right now I'm working in technical support, which is exactly probably what it sounds like when you need help with something, a technology, you call in for technical support. And so I work for Tech-Endress and Hauser, which is an instrumentation company. So these are gauges and meters that are installed in factory processes, breweries, different applications. And people are calling because their meters aren't reading correctly, they need help setting it up. They just have general questions about how our product works. So I'm there trying to instruct them to get their processes working so that they can make the money. And so as in the rotational program, so there's people who work there in technical support all the time. That's their main job that they've taken, they've interviewed for. And I work there as a rotational. So I'm there for maybe 8 weeks, and then I move on to another department. Usually in technical support, there are engineers who are there. I'm one of the first waves of rotational technicians. So I have a little bit more of a technical background. And so after this, I'll move on to the repair and calibration department, maybe.
Okay. So as far as education and training, what's kind of your background on that?
So my background specifically, I graduated high school in North Carolina, and then I was going to a community college while I was in high school because where I'm from, that's free. Like if you're still in high school, you can go to community college and I just have to pay for the books. So I had a little bit of community college background, and then when I was 20, I joined the Navy. And I joined the Navy for all of its benefits, so I could mainly pay for college and so I could travel. And then when I got out of the Navy after 6 years, I went back to college and I changed my major 3 times. And then I eventually ended up getting my bachelor's in HR and management. And then, so that's also not really related to the job that I'm in now. Most people with an HR degree don't end up being in a technical field. But while I was in the Navy, I had a little bit of I was a technician in the Navy, so that kind of set me up. So after I graduated college, it was at an interesting time. It was May of 2020, the height of everyone being quarantined. And so I wasn't so sure about pursuing an HR major or a career in HR because offices were being shut down. And since I had a bit of a technical background, I knew about a program, the Academy of Advanced Manufacturing, through one of our partners here at Tech-Endress and Hauser, and that was a 12-week program. So I guess that would be considered like continuing education certification program education. And so through that program, I got hooked up with the ENH, and I got this job.
I gotcha. Now, what was the program you were doing before this?
Yeah, so that was the Academy of Advanced Manufacturing, and so that's for industrial automation and control systems. So basically, how factories work. The robots, they don't just work themselves. So there's a control system that has logic, that allows these control systems to work.
Right.
So understanding like drives, motors, the controllers themselves, kind of the code that's used to instruct the equipment, basic troubleshooting techniques, wiring. So, like each week of the 12 weeks was a different module. So it was fast-paced learning, a lot of information, basically just getting me the fundamentals so that I could go out and have a bit of a foundation for wherever I was going to work.
I gotcha. So the job that you have right now is obviously a little bit different than what you thought you'd be doing a year or so ago. I mean, I guess that's pretty much life right now for everyone, is probably living life a little bit differently than a year ago. But so what are some of the pros about this and some of the cons, some things you like and some things you don't like as far as the job?
So with this job specifically, this rotational technician role, I really enjoy that it's rotational, right? So a lot of times if there's a company where you're going in, you're having an interview and you're getting hired for a specific position, that's your position for however long until you get some experience, until you can grow and then interview for the next highest position. There's not really like a a path that allows you to start out and go to the top of a company. You have to interview for positions. So with the rotational technician position, I'm able to move around. I'm able to get experience in different aspects of the company. I'm gaining knowledge about how different aspects of the company work together. And so it allows me to perform better in my role, because if someone from the repair department is asking me a question in technical support, perhaps I've been there and know really what they're looking for, what they are experiencing. And so I can better help them and thus them help me. Also for the fact that I can try different positions before I ultimately interview for the final position. Say for instance, I really love technical support and I wanted to stay here. Then I could say, you know what, if there's a spot here, then I want to interview for this position because I know that this is what I want. Or I can say, you know what, I did my 8 weeks, and while it was a valuable experience, I know that I don't want to work in technical support anymore. And then it's expected that I'll go through several rotations before I accept a position somewhere. And so it not only gives me the experience, but it's less likely that I'm going to be unhappy in my role because I've tried different roles and I know what's out there, and I've done it for 8 weeks before I actually, it's like a try it on before you buy.
Yeah, definitely. Have you found anything that you don't particularly like?
In a way, yes. So I like being prepared a lot of times for situations. I don't like not being able to answer questions. Someone's calling me because they need help, and it's because, their process is down in their factory. They need to get the meter working. There's kind of a pressure there, and I want to provide the best customer service that I can for them because I'm the expert that they're calling into. And still being really new in this role, there are times when they know more than I do, and I'm trying to I'm having to go through my manuals and rely on my resources. And so there's pressure, there's the pressure to perform well. I guess the pressure to perform well isn't any job, but they're calling in to me as the expert, and I'm not quite the expert yet. So
yeah, it's sometimes learn by fire, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of times that is a great way to learn, because I'm in contact with the people and the information, I'm right there in it. So I'm learning as quickly as I possibly can. I need their questions to get better. I can only learn so much from reading a manual or, researching the products that we have. I have to hear what people are experiencing.
Right. So with this position, this role, and then with your background, have you thought about like a next goal or next step, or what kind of is that? Are you going to stay in advanced manufacturing, or do you want to go back into HR? Kind of what's your thought on that?
It's really interesting because for so long I've kind of had always been in a transition. It's like high school is a transition to college. College is a transition into the career. But ever since I've got out of college, I've been transitioning. I went through another school, then I'm here, and this is just a bunch of transitions in this program. So it's well, where do I want to end up? And I don't know if there ever really is an ending up anywhere. I do expect that I will always be transitioning through different roles. Here at E&H, it's a very fluid company. Just talking with the person who hired me, I'm in a position that didn't exist a year ago. There weren't rotational technicians. And so knowing that and being in a company that's continually growing allows me to kind of let myself be the limit here. If I have seen in this company that if there is a position, if there is a need, and I can show that I can add value, then I can create my own position. And so that is an exciting possibility that I had never really expected that I would have access to, who think, I can just make my own position. And there are some limitations to that, but I do expect after this 8-week stint that I'll spend some time in repair and calibration. And then also what's nice about E&H is that I don't have to stay here. I'm in Greenwood, Indiana. I live in Franklin. And so E&H has so many different partners that I could spend 8 weeks in Texas with one of their representatives, so I do in the next little bit expect to be transitioning around in the rotational role, and then perhaps within a year decide on a position and then stay in that position for perhaps 2 or 3 years, because I feel at that point, you level up kind of, at that point, you're not a subject matter expert really by any means, but you're also not new. You've been around the block a little bit. So I ideally I would stay with Endress and Hauser rather than be ending up with one of our representative, like one of our partners, just because of what I've seen at the culture here. I'd like to remain an Endress and Hauser employee.
So you're obviously like not constricted to one area to work. Like you're open to going wherever you have to go. Is that something that you've always been like, or is it something that your experience in the Navy taught you?
I think that being just willing to go with the punches and being excited about what could happen rather than fearful of, maybe not fearful, but I embrace the openness. It's always like, well, what can I do next? And I do think part of that was my naval background. Like my dad was also in the military, so I grew up moving around and expecting to always be moving somewhere else. And then I joined the military where I moved, and then I changed colleges twice because I decided I wanted to leave North Carolina and move to Colorado, for the scenery. And so I think I've been primed to want to, or to expect to move after an increment of time. And I enjoy that because I'm getting experience wherever I go. I'm like collecting experiences. My scenery is always changing when I'm moving.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as far as the role you have right now, you with your personality, you seem to be very friendly, very open, and very like willing to listen to people and open to learning. And obviously that's partially because of your Navy background as well. So what type of personality, do you see as being good for this position, and what type of personality may struggle a little bit?
Yeah, I believe that in this position, especially like when I'm in tech support now, being willing to communicate with people is huge. Like having the emotional intelligence and the social skills to have a conversation with someone. Again, specifically in the technical support role, people are calling in and sometimes they don't know the information to give, or they're just like, it's broken, what do I do to fix it? And you're like, well, I need to get some information. I need to start asking these questions. And so having the social skills and the ability to work in a team is huge. Like in tech support, we're in an open cubicle environment, and so there's like 4 other people that I can turn around and see right there, which is nice, because still being new, I'm like, hey, what do I do here? Or but at the same time, it's having to, if you're someone who, likes to be in the room alone, with the classical music on, headphones in, and not being bothered whatsoever, it's kind of difficult to work in that environment here. Being able to multitask, being able to like be talking on the phone and looking through different computers and like reading manuals while also maintaining the conversation, this ability to multitask is also probably huge. And I think in any role, a lot of times, I think I had mentioned it, but the ability to work in a team, just to create a better environment for everyone that's there, because nobody works to go to work all the time. Even if you love your job, it gets old. And so creating an environment, or putting in the effort to create an environment where it's doesn't suck all the time, that's just a good pro life tip, put in the effort for your environment. And then, so perhaps personalities that, I would also say the desire or the motivation to continually learning is probably a big one, especially like here for me, I'm continually having to learn about new products and update myself. It's not just like, okay, well, I know all that I need to know to be able to answer these calls. It's a continual thing. And so if that can get old at times, but it's nice because that kind of like prevents stagnation, and I think that if we get to a point where we're not learning, we're not taking in new information, we're just kind of like showing up, answering calls, and that's it, not really trying, then that is a slippery slope toward like an unhealthy work environment for ourselves, because it's like, why am I here? What am I providing? Whereas if you're growing and learning and taking in new information, there's some substance there.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would someone prepare for a role, not only in your role or position, but just the field in general, maybe the advanced manufacturing or automotive, the manufacturing, automated manufacturing role. How would someone prepare for that?
Honestly, it's interesting because this isn't a field that, if you would have asked me over a year ago that if I thought that I was prepared for or was preparing for, that I would say that I have. But thankfully, there are programs, there's certifications. So for me, my background. What allowed me to get this job was having some technical experience in the military, and that basically came with. It basically boiled down to be able to answer certain technical questions in an interview with the academy, getting hired. That program is specifically for veterans, so there is that. But basically, having some technical background and then having a 12-week course that basically was enough for me to get my foot in the door in this industry. But if I could go back, then I've regretted this for a long time, but not taking more trade school oriented classes in high school, because when I was in high school, it was broken off into very different paths. You either were going to like a community college, or you were going to a university, or you were going to a trade school. And so for me, I was somewhere falling in between community college / university prep. That was like my trajectory. But with what I've discovered about valuable skills in life and what pays well, the trade schools, and that's a kind of a generalization, but taking more trade-oriented classes in high school, that would be a way to prepare.
Okay.
I think in that you would get enough experience.
Yeah, and that could put you in so many different directions after you do that.
Yeah.
So last one here, just some general advice for high school students. Think back to Miranda of a few years ago when you're in high school, something you wish you knew or someone told you, or any kind of wisdom you can impart on our young students.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's like I want to combine so much into a statement. So forgive me if it's like not focused or overwhelming. But one thing, if there's going to be more than one thing, I'm sorry. So it's one thing would be to not take things so seriously. I know that for me, everything seemed so substantial, like I spent a lot of time working, and I understand for me at the time, like as I was growing and maturing, it's difficult to for things to seem, for me to have a worldview, like, so I'm 30 years old now, so I have a little bit more perspective about what things can impact my life and what things won't, and what I should be spending my mental energy on. And one thing would be to not take things so seriously, to be kinder to myself and more accepting and compassionate with myself, and to try new things, to not be afraid, to not let my fear of failing to do something prevent me from doing it. Because being uncomfortable and being in a position where I don't know, but I'm learning, is a great place to be.
That is fantastic advice. That is very good advice. I heard yesterday, it was actually in our church sermon, is the greatest barrier to success is not failure, but boredom. So I think that's something that you talked about. It's not being worried to fail,
Yeah.
and let that scare you. So once again, Miranda Shown, thank you so much for joining me here on the Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project. She is a rotational tech at Tech-Endress and Hauser, and that will be for a little while longer, and then she'll move on somewhere else. So Miranda, once again, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Brian.